Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock on August 14th, 2025, on a Thursday. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Town of Lunenburg's Board of Trust Fund Commissioners meeting, which is an open public meeting, which can also be found on your Facebook page, Lunenburg Access Cable page, after the meeting on YouTube, and it can be found on Zoom, and I'll go over that in a moment. What I'd like to do is I'd like to begin, as we begin all meetings, is open with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, forgive me. I'm going to do that more and more often as my days become busy. I'd like everybody to forgive me for that one again. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Board of Trust Fund Commissioners. I'd like to just read through some meeting requirements. The requirements of the open meeting law, that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel on Facebook, on the Public Access Facebook page. And it will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube after the meeting. Additionally, please be advised that the Town of Lunenburg utilizes a Zoom platform to host its hybrid and remote meetings. That platform utilizes an AI technology known as AI Companion to create audio transcripts of meetings to aid in the subsequent preparation of meeting minutes, and that AI Companion is activated immediately upon launching the Zoom application. You're hereby notified that this AI technology may capture audio prior to the start of a meeting and/or following the conclusion of a meeting. It's called the hot mic. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice, which is the Bellotta Meeting Room at 12 Main Street, Town Hall, Lunenburg, Massachusetts. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended, terminated if technical problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for an in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. That's the way that I prefer people to come, is present, to be physically present. The following information is also provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link, which can be found on our agenda at lunenburgma.gov. The meeting webinar number is 7663167-607, or you could dial the toll-free number of 888-475-4499, and then enter the webinar ID 7663167-7607#. If you have not registered with Zoom, you will be asked for your name and email address. No participant ID is needed. All you need to do is press pound when asked. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise the hand feature in the app to request to speak, and that would be under the heart symbol for reactions in that Zoom window. Okay, let's move forward, if I may. I'd like to open our meeting today with public comment from the public. Do we have any public comment from the public? There's no public here. There is no public on Zoom. I'm looking to see if there's anybody here. There is not. Is there any public comment from the commissioners?
I have no public comment.
And I have no public comment either. Okay. Do we have any announcements or communications from trust representatives with regard to trusts that are under our purview? I see none. Just so everybody knows, we are scheduled for meeting every second and fourth Thursday of the month. We have no treasurer or finance director reports at this time. I do have some information that will come under old business that I will raise. There is no new business that we have at the moment, unless Richard has something to add at this time.
I have no new business.
Okay, there's no new business, so we're going to continue with our old business because our old business is basically going to remain new until we finalize it, for the most part. So I'd just like to mention that the Trust Fund Commission does have a vacancy. We are interested to have you apply for that vacancy. We are a 3-member board. We do have a quorum with 2, but we would prefer to have 3. The powers and duties of the Trust Fund Commission are not that difficult to understand. You just have to have a simple understanding of being able to read a spreadsheet, interpret a legal document, and be able to have your say and vote for different items that are on the agenda. A little bit of math skills would be good for an understanding of how the money is handled, because we are in a pooled publicly traded fund. And this requires a little bit more attention than just sending out a check to a person who is a beneficiary of a trust. In that, our commission goals, we have steadily been writing policy and creating management tools, as well as conducting some investment firm evaluations. And I do have a follow-up on that, but I'm going to open that up to Richard before I open it up for my specific direction with regard to the investment firm. Did you have a chance to read the investment firm's contract with the town?
Yes, I did. I scanned through it. I didn't have time to really read it in depth, but there were a few things that kind of stood out to me, one being the fees. I think I commented to the chair regarding the level of fees that are incurred.
Yep.
In light of the return that we are receiving as a net return to the funds, it's very disproportional. I think it eats up half.
Yeah.
Basically a split. We get 2.5% and they get 2.5%. So that I think needs to be addressed.
Okay.
And what's not really clear is there's also a trading fee that they applies, but we don't have really an understanding of the exact number of trades that are occurring, and if there's too much churn going on just to turn trades to make fees. I think that's not entirely clear either, but I would like to understand that from Bartholomew. How many trades are they executing on a typical quarter or year on behalf of these monies that are invested?
Okay, so I want to kind of take a little in-depth dive on that contract document tonight because I think that the relevance within the document, I made a number of notes with the handling of the funds of which come under our purview, and I'd like to remind everybody that it's not just our funds that are being affected here. We are in a pool, the Conservation Commission and the Cemetery Commission trust funds, and that means that everybody's actions, one fund group over another fund group, and their actions on withdrawals and penalties and things like that are being will affect the entire group as a whole. And we as a commission, because we are gifts from hardworking citizens who have donated their money, primarily here with the funds that we control, we are extremely concerned about boards and commissions that utilize money in a manner that is not conducive to the overall positive benefit to the overall interest bearing of the pool. As well, if anybody understands what hedging is, so hedging is a form of insurance that can be utilized through investments by utilizing the interest payments to hedge against certain trades that are being done to protect those as the market fluctuates. And in hedging, that gives an insurance policy that if somebody needs money there could be a sufficient amount of money through hedging to insure against any penalty or fee. And just remember that the penalties and fees, these go to the private trust company. However, there are fees that have to deal with the specific trades. $2 for this, $4 for that, so on. And there's a lot of questions that are unanswered with regard to how these trades are handled. So we're still planning to meet with the private trust company, Bartholomew and Company, in the future. We're trying to put that together now. We're just trying to get through some legal stuff to make sure that everything is copacetic and we have all the right questions and answers and so forth. So what I would like to do is that I want to basically go over this contract. So this contract that we have with Bartholomew is signed by our treasurer and authorized by our treasurer, who has the authority, along with another person in town who also has authority, which I believe would be the assistant treasurer. So they have authority to enter into this contract with the private trust company. The application that I read that the town has, it was kind of like just, it's very basic, a lot of check boxes just checked over certain items. And, obviously some statements of, who you are, what your address is, all this other stuff. But for the most part, whether you're a municipality, individual, is it a retirement account, what kind of accounts are these, and so forth. And, then there's a lot of policy stuff that comes to what you invest in. So the contract with Bartholomew for the town of Lunenburg has been in effect since June 22nd of 2023. And that's 2 years that we have had opportunity to invest the funds that are part of this pool. They haven't been done. The investments have been held at a certain level, and I'll go over that, and that's a problem. And as Richard had spoke, I don't have all the final numbers, but I'm working on getting them. I want to find out exactly how much money is it costing us to be able to manage this pool of funds and other trust funds, and where's that money coming from? I had a conversation with Ezekiel some time ago, I believe a couple of years ago, with regard to if money is taken out of the pool and there's a penalty, who pays for the penalty? I got a better understanding when I watched the Budget Task Force meeting where Bartholomew said that some cities and towns take it from the interest, which that should not be happening, but they don't take it from the principal of any one account by the actions of any one account managed, meaning cemetery commission or trust fund commissioners in this pool, as well as it could come, if there's no money there to pay for that, it does come out of the general fund, and that general fund comes out of your tax money. So Richard's concern and my concern are not just the concerns that we should be having as trust fund managers over our funds, but overall, the overall pool of funds, as well as this should be a serious concern for the Finance Committee with regard to how these fees are being paid and where they're being paid from and what money is being used for. Because when we look at the numbers, I'm not seeing much return, and we'll go over that. So, here it says here that we have Thomas Bartholomew happens to be the advisor name for this trust. The Town of Lunenburg general funds, which have their own EIN number, is the plan information. So all this money, I would assume, is inclusive of some other monies. As we go through this, I will help explain that. There is a specified EIN number for the town. Obviously, it's an incorporated town. It needs its own tax ID. So in that, Lunenburg has a federal tax bracket, according to this, between 0 to 15%. Its annual income that it's highlighting is more than $500,000. Its estimated net worth is more than $5 million. These are check boxes. I'm just highlighting some of them. The investable liquid assets is more than $5 million. The account funding source or general funds enterprise account The annual expenses are recurring, less than $50,000, recurring less than $50,000 annual expenses, and special expenses are less than $50,000. And the time frame on the investments of these funds, 0 to 2 years is how the customer's profile, which would be the town of Lunenburg's profile, is being set up. So in that, the customer investment product knowledge, obviously, we all have a limited knowledge. Mylene made sure to let the private trust company know that there is a limited knowledge in town on investment. Basically, these are for trust funds is how she has them. And the investment time horizon is a near term, which would be less than 1 year. So, everybody's trying to, get Bartholomew and Company to, do their job, I guess, because all of us aren't skilled in the investment process and policy. This contract is quite lengthy. There's a lot of disclaimers and so forth. There's a lot of legal language that is determinant to accounting practices as well, which doesn't have anything to do with us, but it does have something to do with us if it's not being invested or there's no rate of return and it's costing the town money. Then what is the point in having a fund for 2 years that's costing money than returning money? And that wouldn't be going against the wishes of the great budget task force that we had, who I think did a fantastic job. Why are we not making money with our money? We're still not. Now we're going on 2 years. We originally thought it was only since the passing of 203C, but these funds could have and should have been able to be invested in the pool of 20 list prior to 2024 fiscal. So these are problems. In any case, basically, our treasurer has, a good amount of knowledge in variable contracts, limited partnerships, alternative investments, annuities. I mean, these are just common things that a treasurer does in a town, which is good. I mean, that's why she's been here for a long time. She's excellent. She's great to talk to and work with. The transaction charges that are handled are paid by the advisor, not by the client, and it comes out of an annual management fee, which is a fixed fee, and that fixed fee is 20%, and that's where we're at. So 20%, the total account fee will be reflected on the client's profile. And this is a fixed fee of 20%, so that's 20% of what they're investing for the town is what they're collecting.
Mr. Chair, is that 0.2%?
Is that 0.2%? Am I blind? Go ahead.
It's very hard to read, but that's
Hold on. Haha.
0.2%.
It's 0.2%. I was like 20%. That even seemed high to me when I read it. So, okay, forgive me. Yep, 0.2. So let me make a note of that. So 0.2, I thought that was high. I was like going, wait a minute, that's an awful lot of money. So it's 0.2% on the overall investment pool or investment for the town, for them to manage. I don't think that's working out. I don't know the specifics on that, but I don't think that that's working out to the town's benefit.
I think that's just one component of the total.
Right, it's 0.2% for the management only, but then there's individual trades and what's going on with that we don't know the numbers for. But I'm going to tell you, 0.2% of over $5 million is an awful lot of money for a $49 million budget town. There's a lot of money in trusts in this town. There's not just the trusts that you see that we're talking about. I mean, there's all sorts of trusts in town, of which Bartholomew and Company does have, have an authority over. So it's not just us, okay? So the way that the town has decided to invest, there are no restrictions. Investment restrictions on the account, but the town has decided that they would select income with limited growth. I'm just going to read this real quick. It says, I'm willing to accept limited risk to my investment principal in this account, even if that means that this account does not generate significant returns and may not keep pace with inflation. That's an issue. This objective generally focuses on the generation of current income. Accounts with this objective may be invested primarily in fixed income bonds with up to 25% in equity stock or stocks, but actual investment allocations will differ based on individual client goals, concerns, and market conditions. This objective has historically been the most conservative on a relative basis and has exhibited a lower volatility than objectives that allocate a greater portion of investments to the equity stock markets. However, past performance is no guarantee of future results. And this is where the town has basically been doing since 2023 with the private trust company. This is not using your money to work for you. Right now, we have a stock market. If you follow it, they're looking to increase it by 25 to 50 basis points. Decrease it by 25 to 50 basis points coming up in September, with maybe possibly 2 more decreases in interest rates, which will put the bond ratings to come lower. And if the bond ratings come lower, where's your security? There is no security with low bond rates. You make no money. We should have been investing over a year ago in this, as we had mentioned, in some sort of growth in income which would have been a moderate risk in volatility for higher returns. So that being said, there's some issues that have to get ironed out. And again, nobody's here pointing fingers, but if we're not taking this money to benefit those who are supposed to benefit from the money, what are we supposed to do? That's just how I see it. I just want to continue. Now they have multiple, just so you know, they have multiple. 1, 2, 3, 4. They have income and moderate growth, growth and income, primarily growth and growth. Those are the means for which they'll be able to invest by choice. And this can fluctuate from the terms of the investment cycle. They could decide in this investment cycle they're going to do primary growth. In this investment cycle they're going to do growth and income. Maybe things are leveling off. You want to do income with moderate growth. Maybe things are looking a little sour. You want to stay with income and limited growth. And that way there you can balance yourself out over the quarters, each quarter, every quarter. And there should be an update to this commission on our pooled funds to what this growth rate is quarterly, and what the benefit is to the interest, and what the costs are. And the cost would be, if somebody's taking money out, Cemetery Commission's taking money out of the pool, Conservation Commission is taking money out of the pool, we're taking money out of the pool, how is that negatively affecting the whole? Now, some of our trust funds, we can only hand out $350. If we take $350 and it costs $1,000 to be able to take it out, we can't give out the $350. It doesn't make any sense. If we take out $3,000, it costs $1,000 for cemetery to take money out. That costs $1,000 against the whole pool. Conservation, likewise. It's against the whole pool. These are problems. There should be cycles for which money gets taken out of pooled funds, and that would be on the new investment change in line with the investment cycle. So there are some account instructions here. They have them set up as they want to put holds, okay, on accounts. Hold is a proceed will be invested in an interest-bearing core account sweep program unless the account is ineligible for FDIC coverage, in which case the proceeds will be invested in money market mutual funds. So a CASP account, I'm not going to get into describing CASP account to you. We'll allow Bartholomew and Company to do that for us, okay? But these accounts are on hold, okay? When you sell a security, when you purchase a security, or when an account receives a dividend or interest, okay? And in that holding, the town is choosing to reinvest both mutual fund dividends, capital gains, and eligible stock dividends, okay? So how that works, I'm not going to get into it with you in detail, but holding on to something means just what it says, securing it. So it's securing it, but it should really be reinvested and retraded, is how I see it. if we get interest, that interest should be retraded and reinvested to make money not just off of the principal of the accounts, but also to make money off the interest of the accounts. And this is where I was talking about hedging, is that with that trading of the interest, you can take that money and then you can put a hold on that money to be able to hold it back in times of, any kind of hedging on any trades that are being done on the pool overall. And that's just kind of an insurance protection. Again, that's a little more than I think everybody in the world can stomach, including myself. But these are some of the things that Bartholomew & Company has to step up and inform us. So, if we go down to Schedule A of the document, I just wanted to go over the account sizes. These are what they call PPS custom program accounts and the management fees for those. The transaction charges, there's stocks, EFTs, closed-end funds. There's different charges from $7.95 to $4.95 to $25 to $30 to $50, depending upon the investment. I mean, these are the fees. And then in addition to those fees, there are additional e-delivery options, which is if they're not done through e-delivery, there's additional fees for that. There's a lot of fees. Okay, when you trade money, you have capital gains, there's a lot of fees. Okay, and the thing is that to tighten this up the way it needs to be tightened up is what we're interested in, so that we're making the money of which the citizens have given us charge over and our funds are being managed properly. And we're not being affected by the actions of other people in the pool. We don't want that. We want everybody working together and can come up with a consensus. So, there's a management fee based on account size and transaction charges. And that's basically kind of an overview of the contract. There's a lot of eligibility requirements, insurance requirements, everything else. We don't need to go over that. But this is what we're dealing with. So when it comes to investment and understanding what it means to invest prudently, and I don't think other boards really are paying attention to this, that are in this pooled fund, and we're calling attention to it because everything that they do is going to negatively impact us, okay? Everything that they do is going to positively impact us. So if everybody is saying this is my money, like the Cemetery Commission was saying for 3 years, this is my money, I can do this, it's my money, okay? If boards are going to start acting like that about whose money it is and how it's going to be handled, okay, then we're all not friends working together for the benefit of the people. And that's how I see it. So it's nobody's money, it's the people's money. It's constantly the people's money, particularly what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people's money that they gave, bequeathed, okay, when they died to help and to benefit. Okay? And that's what these other monies are supposed to be for, too, these other gifts. And without any oversight, there's problems. We get what we got for 3 years with my money, I'll do what I want, wasted spending, not following declarations. And that's a concern for me. If these other boards in the pool are not going to follow their declarations properly and efficiently, accurately, with just their own individual oversight, even the library doesn't have oversight. Has an oversight board. For the trust funds that's separate from the library. Why are these other boards and commissions don't have that separate? Well, we're supposed to be that separate, but we're working with the Division of Local Services now with regard to getting that tightened up. Those are some of the next legal steps that we're doing with regard to how declarations are handled, how they're reviewed. We're only advisory for that. We can't tell people what they spend the money on. That's Mylene to decide. But as any kind of oversight or advisory, we are advisory to the treasurer and should be, not just for the trust funds, which the town has basically stated is all we have, because I have a few more things that I'd like to raise with you that's a little bit different than that. But as we move on, I want to just ask if there's any question with regard to this particular document. Richard?
No specific questions. Again, there's the devil's in the details, right? So these fees may be called out, but how much churn is going on that's driving fees? I mean, on the surface, 0.2% doesn't seem like an outrageous amount. sort of in line with what, mutual fund companies charge, but how much churn is going on in the portfolio.
Correct. And we don't have all that information. We're working on it. So, Ezekiel and Mylene have been very helpful. Obviously, we have some new information for everyone. We're trying to get a handle on our direction. This brings me to my next portion of what I was speaking of as I ended the last portion of this, unless there's any more communication or comment that you have, Richard.
No, my only point was if you look at, trying to gauge performance of our funds over the, history, it's sort of my barometer is what I call the target date funds. So companies like Vanguard, Fidelity have 2030 funds. So this is for people who are going to retire in 2030 or they have 2035 fund, 2040 funds. And these obviously, if you're going to, it's 2025 and a 2030 fund is going to be, it evolves over time as it gets closer to 2030 to kind of go more in the safer investments and a little less aggressive. And those funds return, if you look at the past 4 years, like 8% a year. And, to me, that's a conservative approach because people can retire in 5 years. That's sort of the approach you'd want to take on a trust fund. You don't want to try to shoot for a 40% return on all tech, and you don't want to put 100% in a CD, which themselves yield right now 4.5%.
But even so, that's for 5 years.
Yeah.
And if you take it out less than that, your capital gains is huge.
Yeah. I mean, towns wouldn't typically pay capital gains, but
right. But I'm just saying, as far as CDs are concerned.
You know what I mean? So that's sort of my barometer. If a I'll call it
we might be paying
balanced
capital gains if we keep funding non-mandated projects in town.
So I just like to understand why, is our approach just maybe a little too conservative?
Way too conservative.
Given what?
And given the current climate.
What should be perceived as conservative funds? Like, I got my money in something, I'm retiring in 5 years, and I'm still getting 9% a year.
Right. And you're talking
general barometer of what
correct.
We should be seeing.
Like an annuity's paying out right now, it's paying about 9.5%. So just a retirement annuity and a conservative approach is paying out 9.5%. So if you have $500,000 in annuity within a year, the trade is, and I mean, that's a swap between mutual funds and individual stocks and bonds and so forth, but it's, you're at 9.5%. Now, I know it's a little different than municipal finance. However, it's not that separated now that the law has changed. There's a little bit more that you can do, but there's still things that you can't do. Like there's a lot of high-risk commodity investments and stuff like that you can't really get into and as a municipality. But I mean, again, Bartholomew will answer these for us. We have these questions. We will get them to you. We're working on that to get all these questions answered. Budget Task Force did a great job. I can't say it enough. Proud of them. It was helpful.
Yeah, there's still too many unknowns for me to really take a strong stance on anything. And again, as we learn more, we can evolve our position and our feeling on some of these numbers, maybe to just understand them a little better. But right now, we're kind of operating with some transparency, but not full transparency.
Correct. And I don't think that it's intentional. I think the questions aren't able to be asked. So if you read the application, Mylene admitted that there's a limited knowledge of this direction. And she's admitted that, and that's okay. So we say the same thing. Budget Task Force said the same thing. We're not making individual trades, but we want to know, what the options are. We want to have options on, how we see the money working, and what the best bet is, and what the direction that we should be taking. I mean, does that come down with a broker instead of an advisor? Maybe. Maybe that's something else to look at. But in the cost to that, to the returns. Again, these are things that I think have to be looked at. Our interest is to basically met out our money through the trust that we have, but being part of a pool, we have to look at this. We can't ignore it. It just can't be ignored. I can't be a member of a group and say, oh, I don't care what that group's doing, even though everything they do affects me, in how, I'm setting up my camp at Boy Scout camp. Do you know what I mean? Oh, they're a different troop. You know what I'm saying? It's like on that level. It can't be ignored. All right, everybody has to get on the same page with the same understanding and have the same questions, okay? Because their funds depend on it too. We all do, including the other town funds that are being invested that have to be looked at. Again, these are some of the questions that need to come before the Finance Committee, and they need to look at these things. And these reports need to be brought forward by the Finance Director during budget season. What's the rate of return? Not just showing us a number, how to get there. How do we get there and how do we get better? These are things that we have to look at. So back to the initial ending of what I ended with. I want to let folks know that this commission has been doing lots of research with regard to trust funds that we should be having advisory with the treasurer over. One of those happens to be the workers' compensation insurance funds pursuant to Chapter 40, Section 13A, which was ratified in 1913 through the Acts of 1913, Chapter 807, of which I have the documentation. I'm waiting for certified documents now to be able to present, but I forwarded these over to the Finance Director and to the Treasurer that if we have this fund, which I believe we do, this is a fund that basically comes under our purview for advisory on basically the declaration of how it's operated. This comes under the Trust Funds Commission, and this is the problem. For years, people have thought the Trust Funds Commission was just a commission that only overseen a certain amount of funds. Well, that's not true. So if you look at towns like Wayland, Groton, Littleton, Salem, which is a city, the Trust Funds Commission handles an awful lot of funds, including conservation, cemetery, perpetual care, just as advisory to the treasurer. I mean, if all these other towns in Massachusetts, and those are just to name a few, there's a lot, okay, where the Trust Funds Commission is just advisory, okay, to make sure that the declarations are being done. Like I said, cemetery over the last 3 years. You guys all know I ran for cemetery commissioner in this town, so I have a little good working knowledge of what's been going on over there. Sale of lots funds is not to pay for printer ink, to not pay people cash money to be able to plant flowers with no 1099s. Their money is not to be used to buy computer programs. None of that is part of the declaration of perpetual care. And none of that is, it says embellishments, ornaments, things like that. Engraving benches for private citizens, providing foundations for private citizens. This is not to be done. Okay, and this is what happens when you have no oversight and people just spending willy-nilly because they think that they can because it's their money. It doesn't work like that. And these are some of the problems. These are some of the problems that can become systemic. It may presently be systemic. So the Trust Funds Commission is trying to find a way, okay, through statute and through the acts of Massachusetts and session laws, of which has been adopted by this town over the years, since its inception, 1764, I forget. But I've been reviewing a lot of information to try to be able to find out exactly what it is, okay, that is considered to be a gift to the town, or the word given within the regard to our powers and duties. They're two different words, two different meanings. And I'm working with the Chief Counsel, the Division of Local Services, at this present time to do further investigating on that. And we'll get answers for you. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that the trust funds that have been given to us in our purview are handled and managed properly. That will bring me to my next direction. If you have any comment that you'd like to make on what I just said.
I have no additional comment.
Okay, great. So, let's move on to the next thing. So, we have found, has been found by the town, the Worthy Poor Fund, which comes under our purview. And the Worthy Poor Fund was very hard to read. However, the gentleman who gave the Worthy Poor Fund is buried in the North Cemetery. He gave $1,000 in 1901 to the town of Lunenburg. I think he also gave money to Shirley and a few, Groton, and a couple other towns as well. I'm just looking for the declaration. Just bear with me a minute so I can read it. All right. So, the Worthy Poor. It is it says to the gentleman, this is October 12th, 1901, and I did look up this gentleman here, and that's how I know he's buried here. Still have to do a little bit more background research to see if there's a probate will or anything like that that we can have, like, you know, certified documentation and stuff from the probate court. I have to go through the archivist with that, but before I do that, I already talked to her. And I'm working with her to get all these people to see if there's any public record on it. Sometimes there isn't. So it says that Nathaniel Day of Ayr gives to each of the towns of Lunenburg and Shirley in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts $1,000 to be invested by the selectmen or overseers of the fund, or for each of said towns to, it's real hard to read this, so.
The income derived.
So yeah, that the income derived therefrom to be used by
them in improving the condition of the worthy poor, people living out of the poorhouses in each of the said towns.
There we go. See, it's easier to read when it's printed. I'm trying to read it on the computer. It's killing me.
It's still a little.
I know that, but I mean, I printed it out too, but I was like, I could read that on the computer. I read it earlier. But so listen, just so you know, this is like, you know, written in pencil.
100 and...
Okay. So obviously this is in a will and trust because this was, obviously this is in definitely a handwritten document. I don't know if it was written by Mr. Day or his attorney, but $1,000 in 1901 wasn't a small amount of money to help the poor. So in that, we have some terms of trust, but again, what we can, basically, it's the interest. We can use the interest from this money to be able to help people who are in the poor houses. Well, we don't have poor houses. This brings me to a follow-up, which I will get to later on with regard to what they call the Cypress Doctrine, which I've already discussed, okay? We have to make some definition changes and decisions about, you know, what the meanings of these trusts are without changing the actual trust. So we have that one. So then we have the American Legion Post 283 in 2013. It says, the American Legion Post 283, which is to establish a trust fund with the town of Lunenburg with the following conditions. Lunenburg Trust Fund Commission to be the dispensing agency for this trust fund. All funds must be used for the benefit of current or past members of American Legion Post 283 or Lunenburg resident veterans. Veterans must be eligible for membership in the American Legion. They must be residents of the town of Lunenburg for a minimum of 3 years. Other disbursements may be made for qualified programs within the town of Lunenburg that would benefit or enhance veteran services or programs, such as special veterans celebratory functions. Funds in the amount of up to $350 per any 1 year may be dispersed if requested. Should the fund reach an amount in excess of $25,000, any amount in excess can be used for veteran benefits. Thereafter, the maximum disbursement for any 1 year can be 75% of that year's interest. The intent for this is to ensure that funds continue to grow so as to allow a substantial amount can be issued to its veterans. The American Legion eligibility can be determined by the Town of Lunenburg VSO, which is our Veteran Services Office, which is Michelle Durkee. The Town of Lunenburg residents can be determined by the town clerk for their residency. So, that being said, it was signed by Post 283 members, Arnie Rill, the Commander and Treasurer, Robert Wilhock, Senior Vice Commander, Fred Cuddy, Junior Vice Commander, and Ernie Sund, Chaplain, Past Adjutant.
Maybe we should just embellish the discussion a little bit with the fact that the American Legion Poor, as of March 31st, had a balance of approximately $12,490.
Well, is that 283? This is 283, so not the poor fund.
Okay, so this one has the American Legion Poor. So the Lunenburg Post 283 had $8,690.
Correct.
14 cents, and the Worthy Poor had a balance 4 months ago, approximately, of $22,887.
Right. Remember what I was saying about how I did all the interest stuff before I got this? I just got this
Yeah,
today.
you got it back in.
I told you, I went back, like, trying to figure out the interest rates and everything else over the last 100 years.
Well,
Okay?
if you look at the
It was insane.
decline in-
But I got to roughly about the same amount of money. I was like, oh, that was given in like the early 1900s. Then I find the sidewalk fund in 1903. Now I find out this fund's in 1901, and they're all around $22,000. And these people gave anywhere from $2,000 to $1,000. So they just kind of shows you how these funds have been invested. So now that we have these, you know, we want to know from the treasurer's office, like with the sidewalk fund, the Luther Howard Sidewalk Fund, right? We want to know what bank and how far back that bank went, because there's probably record on that. And just so you know, I also have been researching myself some of the past meeting minutes and books that are actually archived all through the 19th and 20th century. So to figure out where these monies are. We're getting there, slowly. It's a lot of reading. But we're getting there, and we're starting to get more and more information. And then we're moving along. Go ahead, Rich. What do you want? Anything else? Okay, all right. So here we are. So now we're good. Okay, so now we have all this, and now what I want to discuss is I did set up office hours to meet with Adam Costa on I believe the 26th, with regard to a couple of items that we're interested to know about. I'm going to be meeting with him around noontime to discuss the comparable trust funds, commissions, and their use of funds in towns around us as advisory, which they're advisory over many trusts. By review of those comparable towns and relevant to trust commissioners' powers and duties here in town. As well as I spoke in conjunction with the the Division of Local Services, Chief Counsel I've been in contact with regularly, weekly almost, with being able to line up the proper direction and maybe get a white paper from the Division of Local Services with regard to the information that I've been able to provide with them about the behavior of trust fund commissions throughout the Commonwealth over the years, and how they have been applied, and how this town is behind the times compared to other towns that are similar size, similar situations, in similar direction. As to the advisory capability of the trust fund commissioners, particularly as those that are applied in statute, with regard to trusts that are, monies rather, that are held in trusts. You have to understand the language here, monies that are held in trusts, okay, by other commissions. So, in its application. So, those are a couple of comments, communications that I will have with Attorney Costa. Cypress Doctrine, the filing of the Cypress Doctrine, which is basically what I had said is we have to figure out, because we don't have poorhouses here anymore, what they would call poorhouses before, that was, propped up by the community or by nonprofits. I don't know, Salvation Army may have had one, not sure. I don't know how they were established. But to figure out exactly, how to best use the money for the intended specific purpose, which obviously is to help the poor in need of residency, and the vested interest issue with regard to the different funds. And that's what we'll be doing coming up on the 26th. I'll be going over some of those issues with Attorney Costa. Just so you know, there would not be an open meeting violation if Richard was able to accompany me there. This is management. It is not debate. Open meeting law applies to debate, just to make clear. I've already cleared that with the Office of Open Government, that Richard and I can meet with an attorney as long as we are not placing something on debate on this table. That is management. It's managerial, it's administrative, it has
Sharing.
yeah, it has absolutely nothing to do with us having to debate back and forth about what it could be used. Like, like this trust fund, I think should be used at this. And he says, well, this trust, I think it should be used like this. That's debate. We're going there to say, how do we get an answer to what we can debate? And that's management. Just to make it clear. So nobody gets worked up. Okay, everybody gets worked up about the open meeting law. I know the open meeting law, and trust me, my intent is not to violate it, but to be completely transparent to the town. 100% transparent. So, that being said, I just wanted to just mention the workers' compensation insurance fund also falls under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 13A, and that comes under our purview here as well as I am investigating right now. I believe that there are some scholarship funds that are held by the school district that actually come under the purview of the Trust Fund Commission. Some don't. Again, this is not semantics. This is money. Who has the money, who authorizes the money, and who advises the person who authorizes the money. We are a lot of times advisory to the treasurer. That's it. Yeah, this fits the declaration. If there's any question, then there's a question. If not, obviously everything gets paid. It's advisory. And, these are some of the things, again, like I said, that we're working with the Division of Local Services. We'll get to the bottom of it so there's no confusion and people don't get all worked up that somebody's going to come in and take your money, make you not be able to spend your money, because that's kind of some of the mentality of some of these commissions in town.
So the workers' compensation fund is solely managed by the treasurer currently.
Well,
how's that being?
So Mass General Laws 40, Section 13A says that any city or town which has accepted Chapter 807 of the Acts of 1913, of which I have a copy of that I had forwarded to you earlier, and which accepts this section by vote of the city council, voters in town meeting, which this town did in 1913, and I got that from the archivist at the state archivist's office in Quincy, may appropriate an amount not exceeding in any one year 1/20th of 1% of its equalized value as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 44 to establish and maintain an insurance fund to pay workers' compensation, from which any compensation payable under the provisions of Section 69 to 75, inclusive of Chapter 152, shall be paid but no money shall be appropriated of such person while the fund equals or exceeds 1% of such equalized valuation. Such fund shall be managed and administered by the sinking fund commissioners of the city or town, if any, otherwise by the commissioners of trust funds of said city or town. If any city or town has such an insurance fund, it may appropriate from such fund, including the income thereof, such sums as may be necessary for the purpose of paying a proper charge for effecting insurance to cover its liability to pay workers' compensation. Now, if you read the credits, this is pulled from Westlaw. If you read the credits, okay, there is a session law, the Act of 1998, Chapter 463, Section 44, was the last amendment on this, and the only thing that they changed in the amendment was they changed it from workmen to workers. That was the amendment change. So, there were also some edits that went before that. However, as of this writing and this posting, this is the active posting from Thomson Reuters and Westlaw. Okay? And the notes on the decisions located herein are from Mass General Laws 4013As in Massachusetts, obviously, State Statute 40, Section 13A. So it's current through the 2024 second annual session. So unless something changes between now and then. Okay? In general, a city or town which provide workers' compensation benefits and self-insures pursuant to this section had to provide workers' compensation benefits for its Emergency Employment Act pursuant to 42 U.S. Code annotated Section 4871 et sec, which means and following, omitted. Employees in the same manner and not through contract with private insurance carrier. That is the opinion of the Attorney General, April 19th, 1972, at page 113. So this is further information of additional funds of which the town is in possession of that is under the advisory and purview of the Trust Funds Commission. So, does that answer your question, Richard? Okay, thank you. All right. So we get to move on. A lot of this stuff, like I said, is legal. You can't really run away from it. It has to do with money. And if you know anything about money and legal, there's checks and balances everywhere, okay, for everybody using money. So nobody has control of money at any one given point in time with no advisory, no oversight, no nothing. Nobody can just spend willy-nilly. But some of that's been going on in town, in other places. Willy-nilly spending. I've been calling it out for 3.5 years. So, so that's what we have for policy, management, investment firm evaluation. We moved into section 3, which is the list of trust funds discussion and other funds like workers' compensation and other town comparisons. Our investigation is continuing, number 4, into the existing 5 funds and how to distribute them with the trust documents. There's one section on here that I did not add that I'd like to add. I'd like to ratify the minutes, the last 2 weeks' minutes. The last 2 weeks' meeting minutes, if we may. I'd like to put a motion on the floor for the minutes for the 24th and the minutes for the 10th.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of July 10th and July 24th as amended. Currently written?
That's currently written, yes, currently written. I would second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes pass unanimously, and those minutes will be transmitted by myself to the clerk, the town clerk's office for posting, as well as I will get over to Kara a copy of the risk management policy, which we voted on at our last meeting in a roll call vote. And that brings me to my next item on the agenda here, which is discussed proposed written policy. So, let's see. Just as an update, also, I'm still waiting some information to come through on the scholarship stuff from some acts that have been passed over the years I'm waiting for a ratification from 1986, of the acts in 1986, Chapter 691, I think it was, with regard to the handling of scholarships in the town of Lunenburg and its ratification by the town of Lunenburg. I believe that was the year. I might be off on the year, but let me see. Let me just check. Yeah, hold on. Okay, yeah, here it is. Ratification, no, sorry. Okay, so, oops. Yes, so it was the 1986 Acts, Chapter 194. I'm looking for the ratification on that particular act, which falls under Chapter 60. I gotta think again. There's a lot of stuff going on. So, I believe it's 60C. Yeah, so, okay, so that was under General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 3C. There's another chapter as well that we've been researching, as well as we've been looking into Chapter 63F and further advancing inquiry into Chapter 114, Section 25, as well as some of the conservation stuff. But again, conservation is a lot of that is state money, most of it. But we're looking into it because we have concern. And we're looking into it in the right direction. What is the actual duty of the trust fund commissioners? According to other cities and towns, it's over a lot of these different funds. We seem to be the only one who's saying, oh, no, just what somebody gave you money. Like, here you go, like a homeless guy on the street. Here you go, trust fund commissioner. Like I'm holding a sign. That's the only fund you can manage. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think that there's been some serious discrepancies over the years here in town with regard to the oversight of the Trust Funds Commission with regard to trust funds. So we will be looking into that to make sure that the people's money is being spent and your money is going to work for you. For now, what we have authority over. That the town has decided to limit us to. So that's that. So we have minutes ratified. Now what I'd like to do is I would like to go over our procedure for investments of trust funds, if I may. You have that with you, Richard?
I do have a printed copy, yes.
Okay. I know, you always have a printed copy. It's awesome. That's why we were able to sign that document the other day. It makes my life easy. I don't have to go back and print it. All right, so this is going to take us a minute to go through. So this is a procedure for investment of trust funds, of how we see the investment of our trust funds. Hopefully, maybe some other folks can incorporate their investment to trust funds. I don't know. But this is basically an overview, and I think this is going to take us this meeting and maybe next meeting to go over, Richard, because it is quite lengthy. I think that it's 8 pages long. I don't think we have time today to go over everything, and there's going to be some question and concern debate. There's some legal parameters and law that has to be read and looked at and reviewed.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a few notes from my
Yeah.
read of it, so.
So what we'll do is, I think we should just, you know what, why don't we just do a reading today? Would you like to just do a reading? Just to let the public know exactly what it is that we're looking at. This is going to be fine-tuned, obviously, by a debate and our discussion. So I think we should just do a quick reading of it. What do you think, instead of just taking it line item by line item?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine to go through the different declarations around the purpose of this document, who it applies to, the statutory authorities.
Yeah.
When we get into the policy part, like the responsibilities, that becomes where I think it's a little more gray for me.
Yep.
Like some of the say like 1B3 around that, some of the, around payment of penalties from pool fund. Is this document, in some regards, it almost seems like it's a job description for the treasurer?
Well, so here's,
Well,
well, the thing is, it is. When it comes to like that particular descriptive part, it is a job description. It's basically saying that this is how we want you to handle our funds.
Right.
Right, that we're holding, okay? And that becomes a discussion, obviously, with the treasurer, okay, about, well, this is where this, you know what I mean? This is where the rubber meets the road. This is why I said, you have a pooled fund with a bunch of commissions that have money, okay? And nobody wants to talk to anybody. Everybody wants to say, it's mine, it's mine. Well, it can't be like that when you're in a pooled fund. Okay, we all have to be on the same page, and the person who steers that is the treasurer, not the funds themselves, not the fund administrators themselves, but the operational functioning of it, okay, is steered by the treasurer. But the treasurer is also guided through the investment advice from the private trust company.
correct. But what's the, I guess I say, what's the enforceability of the responsibilities that are outlined?
Well, the enforceability is the ratification of policy, and if the treasurer steps outside the policy for which we have asked that our funds be invested as,
Right.
we can call the treasurer here to explain the reasons why.
Okay.
That the policy has been, you know what I mean, has been ignored.
Right. But,
And we'll know that quarter to quarter to quarter how it's working.
but the recourse of that,
Well, there's no.
Information is not
Well, here's the thing.
result in,
You could. There's no recourse to your state government employees, okay, who do something, okay, because she does have prudent authority, okay. She's bonded, so she does have prudent authority to make necessary adjustments, right, for the best interest, okay, of the fund outside the policy. She still holds that. This sets a timeline where we can go, hey, how come this wasn't done? She's like, oh, this is why. And that's the answer you'll get from the office downstairs. This is why. This is it, not because of politics or one branch over another, nothing like that. She's restricted. She also carries a bond. So she's going to say, because if I do that, this would occur, that would occur, that would occur. And you know what I'm saying? And this is why it wasn't done. So when you write policy, policy is policy. Policy is made to be not broken, but followed. But you can't micromanage an employee in town with a policy. What you can do is you can set up a guideline where she is forced to give an explanation as to why that changed to the people. And then, the people will decide whether or not she's sufficient enough for the job. That's how that works.
okay.
We're not like in direction. We're saying, like I'll give you, don't make a payment for a penalty in the pooled fund from the interest of the pooled fund that would decrease the value of trust under the management of the board of the trust fund's commissioners. That's the item you highlighted.
Right.
Meaning that,
And that's an item we've brought up as a concern.
that's correct. So we say to the treasurer,
But
if it's going to affect us, okay, negatively, okay, you can't pay that if somebody else is the one that spent the money.
And if she does pay it,
Well, here's the thing. If she does pay it, okay, then she has to come in here and explain why she did pay it. Okay, because the reality is that if she does pay it, okay, something like that, right, where did she pay it from? Did she pay it from the interest, or did she pay it from the general fund? And if she paid it from the general fund, she has to answer to the people why she used money in the general fund to pay a penalty that somebody else on some board or commission mismanaged. Why is she doing that, right? So that would go back to the town manager to say to that board, hey, whoa, you can't just willy-nilly spend your money like that, okay? And as the executive, she's been given that authority by the select board. So it comes back to, it moves right back upstairs to the town manager's oversight authority, right? Then when a board or commission is spending money and it's causing fines, fees, and penalties to other boards and commissions' money, okay, she has to rein them in, okay, for inappropriate or improper spending. It basically hammers it down up the line instead of it going downhill, it goes upstairs. It goes right to Mrs. Warren Diment's office. Goes right there, and she's the one that reins it in.
yeah, I just know that the word responsibilities should be maybe expectations.
Well, yes, and this is where debate comes in to these particular sections between you and me to change and make the adjustments. That's why I said, is that we should read through as a read-through, right? Because we're going to have things like this, where you're going to say, well, what about this, what about that, what about this, okay? And we're going to have to decide on how we make those adjustments and changes to the policy. Like a workshop, same deal. We just do it here publicly.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, I'm not in disagreement with that. I'm understanding what you're saying, but there's also a severability clause in here at the very bottom. It says, if any provision of this policy is or declared unconstitutional or inoperative by a final judgment, order, or decree of the Supreme Court of the United States, Supreme Judicial Court of the Commonwealth, or Superior Court of the Commonwealth, the remaining parts of the chapter shall not be affected thereby. There's a severability clause in the policy that says, if the courts have ruled, like the lawyer comes in and says, no, you guys can't do that. See, here's the precedent set cases. You can't do that, right? Oh, okay, well, obviously we can't do that, so how do we make that adjustment? And obviously, we can vote on a policy, and obviously it's going to be reviewed by the town attorney. It might get kicked back to us as to, could we look at this a little deeper? And then we look at it a little deeper. Why? Because he's going to sit there and say, there's already precedences to this, there's precedences to that, we can't this, we can't that. It's already there. That's why there's a severability clause. So that any issues that arise that are difficult, right, are not etched in stone. They're not etched in stone specifically because if the courts have already ruled on something, or there's a statutory requirement or even a code of regulation, whether it's federal or state, that says you can't do that, or you can do that, but it has to be done this way, then it gets changed and altered to fit that. There's nothing we can do about that. Courts have already answered those questions. And treasurer's duties, treasurer's direction, that's already been answered by the state legislature.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not familiar with what MGL says. These are the duties and responsibilities of town
right.
treasurers. I just don't have that level of depth of understanding. And
right.
For us to add something in,
well, again,
doesn't exist is sort of like, here's our expectations or our recommendations.
Yeah.
As I say, requirements is just, it's almost like there'd be a reprimand if there was a violation.
Well, here's the thing, again.
Because you violated your...
The reprimand never comes from this board. The inquiry as to why it was done gets kicked upstairs, and then it gets looked at. Because I can tell you this right now. Half the problems that occur, okay, half the problems that occur financially, okay, with any government board is the board members themselves. Like you said, making a mistake, making an error, needing a correction, okay? Where does that correction come from? It comes from council and it comes from the town manager's office, okay? Or it comes from the treasurer and her duties because she's the one that's taken an oath as well to be able to uphold a certain amount of fiduciary responsibility. So, there's certain people you can't contest and you can't question over, what a need is. And this is what I mean by something being by debate. We can look at these things and we can say, well, we have a question on this. Well, we have a question on that. How do we get that question answered? Well, if you pass a policy, you have an opportunity to get that question answered and corrected by kicking it upstairs to the attorney and say, review this policy for us and make sure that we're compliant.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just from my initial review of the document was, Section 2, investment guidelines, I think that's fine. I didn't see
Yeah.
anything that is controversial as some of these things in Section 1.
Right.
Those would seem more like, again, almost like writing some parts of their job description.
Right.
As opposed to, here's the general philosophy that for the funds under our purview, these are the types of things we would like to be considered on investments, philosophy and selection and of banks and stuff like that. That seems to be less controversial in my mind than Section 1, which outlines responsibilities, I think.
Well,
I don't know where the line is.
Well, if you want to know what the treasurer's responsibility is, so there is a statute, right, that says what the treasurer's responsibility is, but, the town also has regulation, okay, of the treasurer's responsibility and duties and so forth in the charter. So there's, there are powers and duties that are already there. Okay, what we're asking is in something like that would be, how does that power and duty affect us, and what are we asking not to have happen? Do you know what I mean? And if you sit there and say, I don't want this to happen to us, why are we paying for somebody else's failure to take the money in the proper time? I mean, if you need money because it's an emergency, that's fine. But if you don't have a plan and then you start pulling money and causing fees to the interest of a pool, now you're negatively impacting the other members of the pool, and that cannot happen. And the treasurer should recognize something like that and say, hey, you got to wait. I mean, you got to wait. Well, we need that money now to get this done before the end of the year. Well, you should have thought about that last year. Do you know what I mean? When you were going to take it out. Well, we didn't know. Well, that's okay. You didn't know. Now you can do it next year. Do you know what I mean? And that's where the prudent investment comes in, is that, the treasurer is the one who has a prudent duty to invest the funds, okay, in a manner that does not harm the town. Period. With this new 203C, where they can invest in riskier stocks and stuff like that, you're not going to hold the town treasurer's feet to the fire if the stocks plummet and you were in the middle of an investment cycle. No. You took that chance. That's the point. Do you know what I mean? You can't fire somebody over an investment, you know what I mean, loss. It doesn't happen. Treasurer's job, listen, a treasurer's job is probably the most secure job in any town, okay, or in any business, okay? I know in the construction business, everybody, when it comes to mechanical construction, ready, an electrician's job is never on the chopping block. Never. Why? Because without electricity, you can't work anything. So who's gonna fire an electrician? Nobody. Fire a carpenter first, okay? In business, you're going to fire this chief financial officer? Oh, and how are you going to operate? Oh, you're going to give the financial operations to your chief operating officer? Oh, that's going to work out great. Why? I go, because the chief operating officer is always the one asking for the most money and never getting it. And you want to hand that to him? Oh, yeah, here's the money. Whoa, wait a minute. Do you understand? So a CFO very rarely loses his job. Unless he's, ridiculously, horrible.
Right.
But people don't get in those positions. I mean, I won't say nothing about Jerome Powell at the moment. But like I said, is that, is it right? Isn't it right? I mean, where do you strike the balance? That's how I look at that situation. Where do you strike the balance? When do you do, when do you don't? And this is why policy needs to be written to say, do now, but if you need to make an adjustment, you can't point a finger at anybody. You just have to go, oh, and you have to have an explanation. And when you come out with the explanation and the people are satisfied with the explanation, then you're secure in your position. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I just look at the document as what's the quote, and it outlines expectations more than anything, not necessarily responsibilities.
Well, that's correct, but it does outline responsibilities because we have responsibility. So we have responsibility to make sure that the funds are properly invested, okay, for the benefit of the funds for which we have control. So in that, we have to make sure that whoever's investing the money, right, is not investing it causing us a problem with losing money. Do you see my point? See, that's why we have in our agenda, if you notice, there's a section that says Treasurer, Finance Director updates. Okay? This is where you start asking those questions, and that's why we have it here. It says right here, it says Treasurer and Finance Director reports. And then at the end, it says Treasurer, Finance Director, Public Comment.
So if the treasurer, finance director never show up to this meeting,
Oh, they show up when I ask them to.
okay.
But I mean, you can't just sit there and tell them, show up next week. You got to schedule them.
I know, but what if they just ignore the request to show up?
They can't. They can't. That would.
I mean, I'll say they would.
Yeah.
I don't know the,
Then we have to go to the select board, then we look like a bunch of whining little kids, and, it just gets messy. Ready, when we have specific concerns, specific questions, specific inquiries about specific handlings about things, and we send them inquiries and say, we want you to come before the public and explain to them, because we don't want to look like we were the ones that caused that issue. Do you know what I mean? To that extent that this is a group issue, like I said, it's a pooled fund. I mean, if one commission does something and another commission does something and it negatively impacts the other commissions, right? Does that commission come forward and say, hey, yeah, I took that money out and I really shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. Do you think that's going to happen? No. That's why we have the treasurer to go like this. Why did you take the money out? You knew that was going to negatively impact our fund. Could we please have an answer? And that is how we get our answer. We get our answer through the rightful fiduciary, which is the treasurer. And the finance director, it's a fancy word for the accountant. Sorry, somebody else told me that the other day. He was going like this, why do you call it a finance director? I go, because he doesn't just account, he writes policy, he does things more than accounting. And they're like, that's an accountant. I'm like, okay. I just went, okay, he's an accountant too. But he is. So, so it's kind of like, where do you strike the balance? Well, the balance comes out of the horse's mouth. Who wrote the check? Ready? Who signed the check over the check being signed? Town manager, treasurer. They're the ones that sign the check. Okay? And I'm not sure if this goes on warrants for the select board. And if it does, they're the third party that signs the check. So now you have three different groups of people, the board itself is a person, technically. They have to answer at the same time as everybody else as to why did you do this? Why did you allow this? You know what I mean? It's just an accountability principle. It's not like going, you know what I mean? Like, let's go fire somebody. Who cares? Like stuff happens, business. And this is municipal government. Stuff just happens. Oh. Costs happen. That's why, look at the cost to do extra snow removal, $400,000. Have a nice day. Who knew that snow was coming? But thank you for a reserve fund that was able to pay for that. Do you see my point? But now how do you bank up and build that reserve again? Where do you get it? It's all... it's all in financial management. And part of what we do is, and part of what these other boards and commissions have to do is financially manage. When you financially manage, you have a well-oiled machine, everybody's happy, everybody's making money, and the explanation you get from across the table in the treasurer's office is.
But I think the only way you're really going to get to the point where you don't have, unexpected circumstances happen or unplanned things or just maybe just a general lack of planning impacting the 5 funds that are under here if they just totally get carved out from the pool.
Well, here's the problem. So if they get carved out from the pool, they don't return the amount of money that they would be able to generate had they remain in a pool. They would just be their own fund. So the whole purpose of 203C was to pool money together that you could pool together, and this is why I says that I'm continuing my inquiry with the Division of Local Services and the Chief Counsel there, okay, and I'm doing the research, okay, is that if you are in a pooled trust fund, okay, regardless of what pool it is, unless it's specific, like OPEB or retirement, okay, by statute, okay, it comes under advisory of the trust funds commissioners, okay, with its proper declaration and use so that those problems don't exist. And this is what I spearheaded to work on right from the beginning when I said, I'm sorry, but just because there's no precedent case, Adam Costa, which I said to him at the select board meeting, doesn't mean, that just means that the courts haven't ruled on it. But when you look at 351 cities and towns, it seems like everybody else is doing something totally different than what we're doing. And there's more advisory over all these trust funds by the Trust Fund Commission, but not in this town. In this town, it's only these 5. Why is that? Why is that? I already showed fraud and abuse in the cemetery. That was pretty easy for me to figure out. Do you know what I mean? And I ran on that. But here I said, okay, saying the same thing. Where's the fraud, the waste, and abuse? And is it going to come in fees on withdrawals from funds that are going to affect the ones that the town said that, here you go, Mr. Trust Fund Commissioners. This is ones you can only hold. Oh, okay. Then don't spend money that's going to negatively impact the fund of which we have, we have protection over. We're a protectorate.
But that's just the reality of the situation where they're faced with a lot of, I'd say, ours is more of a controlled disbursement.
No, cemetery is a
We have-
controlled disbursement,
Well-
conservation is controlled disbursement, all these are controlled disbursements. Now, something like, free cash and otherwise that the town manager writes off, you know what I mean, for extra stuff to pay extra bill, that's, in some of the other funds in town that, doesn't have any, it's got oversight by statute. What I'm saying to you is that we're doing something that other towns, are doing, and we're not doing that. And there's a reason why we're not doing that, but that reason is causing a serious money problem. And it's going to cause a money problem. Okay, when the funds are pooled, start affecting negatively the other funds, the other funds aren't going to be happy about the interest that's being generated. When we have a pool, like our funds are very small with what we have until we figure out the workers' compensation fund. But our funds are very small.
Yeah.
Okay? So what's hedging our protection when the other 2 larger funds screw us? You want to talk like that? There. They screw us by getting fees for just drawing money willy-nilly.
Right. But if you carve those 5 funds off into a separate managed
Then you don't
account-
generate the same amount of money, and that's what the
Well,
Budget Task Force said.
But if you're paying fees, if you had that
It's the
77,
mismanagement of
If
the
you
other
had-
2 funds with no advisory or oversight.
but if you had that $77,000 approximately generating 9.78%,
Mm-hmm.
that's doing much better than the other, 14 of them are that are getting a return minus fees. I mean,
Right, but that's only if the fees add up, which we don't know what those are. But I'm saying is, I understand that
Potentially.
principle, but the more money that can be pooled into a pool needs to be pooled into a pool, but who's going to be advisory over that pool?
right. Because the larger the pool, the less the percentage management fees are, so there is some leverage to being part of a bigger pool.
That's correct.
So we have some upside by getting lower fees by being part of the greater pool, but then we're also getting negatively impacted by being part of a negative pool.
Well, that's what I mean. This is called management of those different commissions of their money, and the treasurer is saying you can't withdraw that until this happens. And that's why I said is that, there's investment cycles. So when can you take the money out? These boards need to ask the treasurer, when can we take the money out that doesn't cause a penalty? And how much does it cost for us to take it out? And Bartholomew and Company needs to come forward and say, this is the minimum that you funds can go, before you start costing yourselves money. So you can't deplete your fund to nothing. You need to hold. Obviously, you can't hold something if the declaration says otherwise.
Right. If you look at the report that you had, the 33125, looks like, really, if I read this correctly, the transfers of principal, so that's really the expenses.
Right.
So the cemetery had $28,100, and no other funds had any during that period.
Had no what?
Had no withdrawals.
No.
Right. It was under.
What did I just finish telling you about the cemetery willy-nilly spending for 3 years? It's too much money being taken out, on this, on that, on this, on that, on this, on that, and what are the fees? This is what I'm trying to say, is that if you're just taking money out willy-nilly because you want to claim it's your money and you can do what you want, then you're not taking into consideration the other commissions that are in the pool. That's the problem. And the treasurer has to rein that in and say, no, can't do it. Why? We're not paying a fee for that. You can wait on that. You can take it out at this investment cycle and stop it. But if she doesn't do it, if we're part of that pool, we can say, you have to do it, because that negatively impacts us in the pool. You see?
I understand.
Now we ask the treasurer to come in and explain why it was done. Was it an emergency? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, if there's an emergency and you need the money, you go do the money. But I highlighted wasteful spending, computer programs, engravings, you know, printer ink, okay, paying citizens cash with no 1099. I don't understand that. That's wasteful spending. That's misapplication, too, of the declarations. So in that, that's why we need a handle on direction and what we're going to expend and how we're going to expend and what's going to affect us and what we're going to be able to see, okay, as a member of a pool. We're a member, and that means members have to work together. Just because you belong to Troop 766 and I belong to Troop 35 doesn't mean when we go to camp that just because you're over there and I'm over there and we're going out to get firewood, we're still having the same campfire. Your wood's no different than mine. And that's what we can't have. We can't have it separated. The pools need to be together with an understanding as to why this fiscal responsibility is necessary, and the spearhead to that has to be the treasurer on that, and the finance director. Not the timing, not the timing. You know, getting denied your money is not good. But if you have a plan, you can't get denied. Like if somebody wants to, some of the money that we have to met out, we have to tell them that, okay, we're going to authorize this money to you to help you or whatever by the trust, by the trust declaration, and here's the money at the end of the investment cycle so it doesn't negatively impact us or anybody else. But this is the date you'll get your disbursement. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Does that make sense?
Theoretically, it does, yes.
Yeah, theoretically. Well, everything's theoretical until you put it on paper. You got to put it on paper and put it into action. That's it. And that's what we don't have, and that's what we're working on. Putting this on paper to take an action. All right, so we're winding down here. So any further discussion?
I have no further comment.
Okay. All right, our upcoming meeting is August 14th. Well, I'm sorry, August 21st. I don't think we're doing an executive session on that meeting, or I don't think one's necessary. I'm still trying to work something out with Ezekiel and Mylene and the private trust company. Is there any public comment? Anybody have any public comment? No public comment. There's no public on Zoom. Any public comment from the commission?
I have no comment.
Okay, well, there's no public comment, no treasurer or finance director here today. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimously. We are adjourned at 6:33 p.m. on August 14th, 2025. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here for the Trust Fund Commission.